Welcome back to the Single Malt Review, coming to you today from the great outdoors. And our whiskey today, we're venturing into Speyside once more. What have we got, Tim?
It is a rather old Linkwood. 23 years old from what I will assume is a bourbon hogshead, because it doesn't speak to me of sherried whiskey, and it's one of only 211 bottles. So in no way was that ever a sherry butt, and that's low even for a hogshead. But when you look at the percentage, which has come all the way down naturally to 48.8%, that sort of tells you that this cask was a bit of a leaker. So this was probably bottled in a bit of a state of panic at Adelphi's warehouses. But never mind, their loss is our gain, as we have a rather lovely old Linkwood, as old Linkwood is prone to being. One of the classic Speysides, really.
It was bottled in 2012, but distilled in 1989. This started its life during the final days of the Cold War.
No, it's seen some interesting times.
Comes to us in this very decade.
So, it's a fairly light dram, as you'd expect from a bourbon hoggy, but still there's a good gold colour there. I can see some lovely resilient bubbles hanging on there despite the low strength. It's probably, given that it's right on the border with 50%, you'll still see quite a lot of that sort of that really good thickness of the spirit there, preserving those oils. But it's an old whiskey, it's an old bottle, so this maybe is beginning to lose some of its character. So it's good that we've got to it now. This was one I discovered while I was cleaning recently. That's always a nice surprise. But anyway, let's see what we have.
On the nose, I'm getting a handful of vanilla pods and a spoonful of maybe dark bush honey.
Absolutely, the honey, and there's almost banana skins in there as well. Definitely vanilla. It's really quite classically bourbon matured now that we really get in there. And being at such a low strength, it's given quite a lot away without the addition of any water. It's quite a good strength to approach, really. There's no prickle on the nose. Oh, that's extremely promising, actually. That's really very good. It's reminding me a lot of Klein Leash. It's quite waxy, quite buttery, quite oily.
I agree with you. I'm getting all those too.
No, let's see what's on the palate.
That's very waxy, very fruit peely, lots of apple skins, some dates.
That really is quite
savoury
classically
fruit scone of a whiskey.
And it's extremely soft, as you'd probably expect given the strength in the bottle. That has come down a very long way when you consider that it was probably filled at 63%, is the usual filling strength. That has lost a great deal of volume in the cask over really not a great deal of time, given that many 40-year-old bottlings are bottled over 50%. This was a very, very active cask in terms of its ability to transmit atmosphere to and fro from the spirit. So, though it's only 23 years old, which is not young by any sense, this is call it an artificially old whiskey. It's the forces it's been exposed to have aged it much, much faster than would normally happen. So I'm getting a huge amount of old whiskey character out of this one.
Those characters are so concentrated. There's so much packed into this whiskey.
I'll put just a smidge of water in. I'll have to be very careful, because when you have whiskies that come down over 50% like this, as you get closer and closer to that 40% margin, you have to be very, very careful, because you can so easily drown them with too much water. But I think this one can take just a little bit and may even become just slightly more expressive. That hasn't done it too much harm, and that's brought the fruit out some. It's let the wax and oil go slightly more into the background, and that banana and apple, pear has really freshened up.
There's a lighter, more perfumey note to it now. Oh, and that's turned silky smooth on the tongue.
I mean, it was smooth before, but it has just gotten... It's gotten a bit more generous with that bit of water.
A bit sweeter even, in hints of pineapple.
It's really actually quite a phenomenal whiskey. To find a cask that really is flawed in that it's giving too much away to the atmosphere like this is a real gem if you can find it in an independent bottle, because they're often bottled in sort of a state of emergency because they're plummeting towards a either too low or downright unsaleable level of strength, because if Scotch whisky goes below 40%, it is of course no longer Scotch whisky and can't even be sold as such. So you really don't want that to happen. So if you've got a cask that's heading in that direction, then that cask is going to be bottled one way or the other, because the only way to save such a whisky is to vat it with a stronger one to bring that percentage back up, and then it is no longer a single cask. So it really is a priority for bottlers to get that into a saleable state if that percentage is going down like this one was. So it's a real sort of a plus for the consumer, because we get to pay less for oftentimes a interesting whisky far beyond its years. I haven't myself tried a great deal of very old Linkwood, but I do hear that it can become exceedingly interesting as it goes towards 30 years old and beyond. It can turn into something really quite magical, as a lot of these mild Speyside whiskies do. But
what we have here is quite remarkable in and of itself. It's 23, that's not a young spirit, and being below 50% naturally through just sheer time and evaporation.
No, that really is quite gorgeous. I think some parting tasting notes there is, I think, some blossom coming in now with the addition of water. There's some honeysuckle, a little citrus blossom, lemon citrus blossom. The sort of waxy element is still there, only now in the background with that addition of water, and there's quite a lot of pithy fruit. So the banana, particularly banana skins.
It has lightened and become sweeter without losing any of those.
There's a
stronger,
bit
more
of
savoury
pithy
characters.
citrus moving in. It's really quite an ode to Speyside, this one.
Yes.
No, I'm glad I found it. I just wish the bottle had been slightly fuller when it did roll out from under the pile of trash that I was cleaning at the time, but still a very pleasant surprise.
With only 211 bottles from this cask, your odds of finding one in the store are low, but if you do see one, by all means go for it. It's a unique, exceptional Speyside.
And any Linkwood is worth a look, because though it does have its own very limited single malt release, it isn't common, and it's by no means the best Linkwood you can find. So look for it, as I always recommend, in independent bottlers, be it a vatting or a single cask. It's very much the best way to see your more interesting and your more mature Linkwoods outside of the blends where the great majority of the whisky goes. I believe that significant quantity goes into Johnny Walker and other brands under that umbrella, but if you can get it on its own, then always well worth a look. I think to assign a score, this is getting into 8.0 territory for me. It really is very, very good. It could be very close to an 8.5, so somewhere within those two margins, but no, very, very enjoyable and quite a unique thing for a few reasons.
I'd agree, an 8.0 from me. It is a real, just a slice of history because of its age and the time in its span, and because of the truly unique characters it's got from its lineage, from its cask.
Old
its maturation.
beyond its years, and very uncommon for it.
And because there's so relatively little of it.
So no, if you are in the shop and you do see a single cask with an unusually low whisky percentage in there, something below 50%, it is always a bit of a gamble, because of course you're getting less whisky in the bottle fundamentally, and it could indicate a cask with a fault, But sometimes, and I think if it's a good independent bottler, most of the time it's going to indicate a special whiskey which has matured in a rather unique way, and you're going to get something really pretty good. So I would go for those when I could, really. But
It is,
anyway,
as a general rule, hard to go wrong with an Adelphi single cask bottling.
no, that's a rule to purchase by, certainly. But either way, that has been the single malt review with a Linkwood. Possibly the only one we will see for some time, given that they don't come around too often. But either way, we will find something interesting in the cupboard for you next time. And do check back in. Slàinte.